Alright, we're back. They left the operating room. The hallway took them around several corners and past several doors, but they were all locked. Until, at last, their final door was hidden in a corner of the hall. Junpei grabbed the handle. As he made to push it open, a voice stopped him. The voice came from behind him, and belonged to neither Seven nor Clover. Jumpy! He spun around. He saw someone running towards him from the other end of the hallway. There were 3 people coming towards Junpei and his companions. Santa, Lotus, and June. They pulled up short in front of Junpei, breathing hard. Whoa! What the hell is this? What are you doing here? What? But we didn't... Before he could finish, Clover spoke. Hey guys, could you come take a look at this? She was standing near the end of the small hallway that branched off to the right. The rest of them ran over to her, curious as to what she'd found. There was something on the wall at the end of the hallway. A map of the ship's interior. It said C deck in the upper left corner. It was, they assumed, a map to the floor they were on. Door 7 and door 8. The map confirmed what they already knew. Both doors eventually led to the hallway where they'd found themselves. In fact... Yeah, isn't that what I said? We aren't going to be split up permanently till we find door 9. We might get separated for a little while, but we'll see each other again. Otherwise, we won't be able to open door 9. That's how the non-re game works. Junpei looked at the map of the ship's interior again. As he looked more closely, his surprise and excitement gave way to weariness. One by one, the others saw what he'd seen. They moved as one for the door. He pulled the map of the ship's interior off of the wall, put it in his pocket, and followed the others. The 6 of them stood in front of the door, arrayed in a semicircle. Santa stepped forward. He took hold of the door and spoke without looking back at the other 5. Ready? I'm gonna open it. Slowly, all 5 nodded their silent assent. With a deep breath, Santa threw open the door. They poured through the doorway and into the room. Even without looking around, each one of them knew where they were. They were just where the map had said they would be. The same room they'd been not so very long ago. The tremendous central hospital room with empty beds from wall to wall. I see. I believe I understand what you're saying. 6 of you split into 2 teams and went through doors 7 and 8. You solved the puzzles in the operating room and the laboratory, and then met one another in the hallway after opening your respective locked doors. He looked like anyone might after only just waking up, but it seemed that his brain was working as well as ever. He had managed to grasp, summarize, and understand each team's report. At any rate, I feel a bit silly for my show of altruism. I'm sure you'll be back for me. I did hope you'd come back, but I confess I didn't think you'd be back so soon. Ace shook his head with a rueful smile. Well, we saw each other again, and we ain't dead, so I say that's good enough. 7 smiled. Anyway, I say we get out of this creepy old place. We found the key we need. The key? Ain't that what I just said? I'm talking about the Jupiter key. We found it in the operating room. Right, Junpei? Junpei nodded. Ah, the solar system keys. Actually, we found one in the laboratory, too. Here, the Earth key. Lotus dug out a still warm key with an Earth symbol on it. I might lose it. It's probably better if you hold on to it. That way it won't be my fault if it gets lost. And with that, she pressed it into Junpei's hand. He felt slightly less than honored. As a group, they now had 3 keys that had not been used. The Jupiter key, which had been found in the operating room. The Saturn key card, which had been found in the kitchen. The Earth key, which Lotus had just handed to Junpei. Junpei tucked the new keys into his pocket. June spoke up. The Jupiter key is supposed to be for the door at the end of that long straight hallway, right? Yeah. If the map's right, then it connects to the central staircase. Then next to the stairs... Wait! They were the first words anyone had heard out of Clover in quite some time. Her face suggested they weren't going to be very happy words. What about door 3? Look, You saw the map, right? It's the same as 7 and 8. It just leads us back to the big hospital room. There's no point seeing what's on the other side of that door.
There is a point. At least there is for me.
There were tears in her eyes, but she glared at 7 as hard as she could just the same. She looked very much like a frightened puppy. There wasn't a man alive who could have resisted those eyes. 7 looked everywhere in the room except at Clover, and muttered coughed apologies under his breast. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Snake might be on the other side of door 3. Clover nodded once. The next person to speak was Ace. Very well. I'll be coming with you then. I've had a nice long rest. I think it's time I was up and about again. So, 7. You'll help me, won't you? Huh? Me? Junpei did the calculations quickly in his head. 4 plus 1 plus 7 is 12, 1 plus 2 is 3. It looked like 7 was doing them too. At last, he gave up. Damn. Well, I guess that's how it's gotta be. So I'm going with you, huh? Yes, you are. Alright, let's get moving. And so it was decided that Clover, Ace, and 7 would discover what lay beyond door 3. Okay, we're heading out.
Be careful.
Whoa, didn't think I'd be hearing that from you, Lotus.
Don't let it go to your head. I'd be in trouble if the 3 of you bought it. The rest of us can't open the 9 door.
Ah, the truth comes out. 7 nodded as if this answer made much more sense, and pulled the lever on the red. Okay, let's go. The door opened and Ace, Clover, and 7 jumped through it. 6, 7, 8. After exactly 9 seconds, the door closed noisily.
Alright, we should get moving too.
Huh?
Get moving?
Where are we going? Everyone except Lotus seemed rather confused.
Well, it'd be a waste of time to just sit around, wouldn't it? Let me explain. I get it. We're gonna see if we can get anywhere interesting with the Jupiter key. Yes, if we're lucky, we might find Snake.
They were at the end of the hallway, lined by individual hospital rooms. The Jupiter symbol was engraved on the keyhole.
Alright, Junpei. Open it, if you please.
Yeah, on it. Junpei pulled the Jupiter key out of his pocket and slid it into the keyhole. He twisted. Sorry. With a nice sharp click, he felt the door unlock. Alright, ready guys? Junpei's companions nodded. He nodded back, then slowly and quietly opened the door. Inside was exactly what he expected to see from the map of the ship's interior. They were in a tremendous hall, almost like a ballroom with a massive central staircase. Great, back to the beginning. You sure this is a good idea? What do you mean? Well, we already searched every inch of this room, didn't we? I'm asking you if there's any reason we came back here. Of course there's a reason. Man, sometimes I can't tell if you're smart or just lucky. Huh? This. Junpei pulled 2 things out of his pocket. The Saturn key card and the Earth key. Santa cocked his head to one side like an inquisitive bird and looked at them. After several long moments, during which it became apparent that Santa had no idea what the cards meant, June took pity on him.
Don't you remember, Santa? On C-Deck where we are now, there's a big elevator behind the stairs, remember? And next to the elevator, there was a card reader with the Saturn symbol on it. And on the A-Deck, on the door to the left, there was a keyhole with the Earth symbol on it. I think. So the 2 keys that Jumpy has should let us use the elevator and the door on A-Deck. Huh. Yes, that's right.
June smiled, pleased with herself. So did Santa. Alright, I got it. Let's get this started then. What do you say we split into 2 teams? Lotus and I'll search the Earth one, you 2 can search Saturn, alright? Sounds good. Junpei handed the Earth key to Santa. They decided that their initial search should be brief, only 10 minutes. They'd meet back near the staircase once they were done. Junpei and June headed for the elevator. Sure enough, there was a card reader bolted to the wall next to the left of the elevator. He lined up the Saturn keycard and swiped it through the reader. A light on the upper left corner blinked to life. Great. Looks like it's working now.
Alright, now how do I call the elevator?
There was a single button to the right of the elevator door. On the button was an upside-down triangle, the universal symbol for down. There didn't appear to be an up button. Junpei pushed it. He didn't have much of a choice.
It opened. Look, Jumpy!
June's voice was excited, but Junpei could hear a tinge of anxiety. Sweet, it opened. Let's get going. He grinned at June and then stepped towards the open door. As he was about to set foot in it, he felt a hand on his arm.
Wait.
What?
I'm not really... I just... Oh, gosh.
Junpei was at something of a loss. What could she possibly be so frightened of? June was probably afraid of... I really love the dialogue in this part, but this will go faster. In the something of time. There's some phrase in the something of time. I don't remember what the word something is supposed to be replaced with. Essence? I don't know. Anyway, she was afraid because the only elevator button pointed down. That meant, of course, that the elevator couldn't go any higher than the floor they were on. As he thought about it, Junpei realized he hadn't seen elevators on the A or B decks near the central staircase, all of which meant that the elevator could only convey them to the lower decks, and the floor below the one they were on, D deck, should be completely submerged. That meant... Hey, wait a minute. This elevator came up from somewhere under us, right?
Well, yes, I guess it did. It didn't open right away after you pressed the button. There was a motor noise like it was moving and then it opened.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So, take a look inside. Junpei jerked his head towards the interior of the elevator. It's not wet at all, is it? The walls and even the floor are totally dry.
Oh, you're right, they are.
She looked around the elevator, slightly embarrassed. Well, let's test it.
Test it?
Yeah, watch this. Junpei put one foot in the elevator and bent around the corner of the door until he could see the floor buttons. There were only two, E and C. He pushed the E button and jumped out of the elevator. The door slid shut and they heard the grinding of the motor as the elevator car moved down. A few moments later, they heard the sound of the elevator door grinding open several floors below. Junpei nodded to June and pressed the elevator button again. A few moments later, the elevator returned. The door slid open, and just as Junpei had expected, there was no water to be found. See? Junpei couldn't resist puffing out his chest, just a little bit. June, however, still looked confused.
What does that mean? How can the E deck be safe if the D deck is full of water?
Well, here's what I think. The elevator shaft and E deck must be watertight and separated from wherever the ship's been punctured. Here, let me show you. He pulled out his notebook and pen and sketched out a rough illustration.
I see.
So that's why the ship hasn't sunk. The shape of the inside keeps it all from all filling with water? Yeah, I think that's what's going on. Junpei continued talking as he closed the notebook and slipped it back into his pocket. So I'm gonna go down and check it out. You stay here, alright?
But...
Come on, just do it, alright? He gave June's shoulder a reassuring squeeze, then hopped onto the elevator. He pushed the E button and the door began to close. June looked worried, her eyes darting back and forth as if she was trying to make a decision, when suddenly...
I'm coming with you!
Huh? At the last possible moment, June dashed forward, turning sideways just in time to slip through the gap between the closing doors. Junpei jammed his finger against the open button, but it was too late. The door had shut, he and June were in the elevator, and it was headed down to E deck. He was so surprised by June that he didn't even have time to think about what awaited him on the E deck. The elevator stopped and the door slid open. They stepped off onto the floor outside the elevator. Nothing seemed especially unusual. No fish going about their fishy business, or jellyfish floating lazily through the water. There was, however, a blowfish, or at least something that looked very much like one. June's cheeks were puffed out, and her mouth a tiny, intense frown. Oh, knock it off. It's just like I thought. This part hasn't flooded. Come on, just look around. There's no water here. June looked around nervously, then exhaled. You're right. It's not flooded at all. See? But there's a whole lot of water. Yeah, right on top of us. What's going to happen if the ceiling breaks? Junpei thought about that for a moment. We'd probably die. Oh, don't be so casual about something like that. At any rate, we should probably go back as soon as we can once we're done looking around down here. Lois and Santa might already be back. Okay, good idea. Junpei glanced around the room. They'd something. They'd found themselves. Anyway. First thing you noticed was a set of thick iron bars. They ran the length of the room, separating the left elevator from the right one. Well, we can't go over there. Right. Then perhaps, in the corner of the room that housed the elevators, Junpei found an opening. He walked up to it and stuck his head around the corner. A long, straight hallway stretched out in front of him. That door at the end of the hallway. There's something written on it. Yeah, let's go have a look. Junpei and June set off down the hallway at a brisk clip, somewhere between a run and a jog. It says 6, damn it! Before long, they found themselves in front of the door. On it was a number written in bright red paint. 6. I knew it. This is a numbered door. And indeed, there was a red bolted to the wall right next to the door. Of course, with only 2 people, there wasn't much they could do with it. Alright, let's head back. Yes. Junpei and June turned and headed back to C-Deck. On their way back, Junpei noticed a map on the wall. As it turned out, it was a burnt map of the ship's interior for E-Deck. Huh. So you guys found door 1. They met back up with Santa and Lotus, who had explained what they found. Apparently there was another numbered door on A-Deck, just like the one on E-Deck beyond the door that the Earth key opened. According to Santa and Lotus, there was a 1 on the door. All told, they had discovered 2 new doors, the 6 door and the 1 door. It is interesting that E-Deck wasn't flooded. Lotus was quiet for a moment, lost in thought. Well, we don't really know if all of E-Deck is safe. We only checked the area around the elevator. Even so, it's still very interesting. You said the 6 door was there, right? Yes. Then that means Zero planned all this out, even the sinking. That had to mean some pretty serious remodeling of the ship's interior. It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it. Yeah. I wonder how long it took. I can't even imagine how much it must have cost. Would have been a ton, that's for sure. Well, that does go along with what Ace was saying. The most reasonable explanation would be that this was done by some organization with access to a whole lot of cash. Yes, it does make sense. That thought made them all go quiet for a moment. June bit her lip while Lotus sighed softly to herself and Santa cracked a stiff neck and stared off into the distance at nothing. I don't think it's a very good idea to stay here. June looked up at Junpei with large, pleading eyes. Yeah, you're right. Ace and his team might be back already. Well, June, Junpei, and I should be able to go open door 1. Huh? You guys leaving me behind? Just kidding. Alright, let's go. Lotus's words were all the impetus they needed. Back to the large hospital room they went. The moment they stepped inside, a tremendous voice echoed across the room. Hey! Where the hell did you guys go? It was 7. Ace was right behind him, and Clover was behind Ace, although she seemed to be hanging back. It looked as though there was something strange about them. 7 had the look of the man who'd seen a ghost. Ace was just as pale, and Clover looked as though she was only moments from passing out entirely. For a long moment, they simply stood there, looking at one another. Junpei looked around nervously, waiting for someone else to speak. No one did. He looked at 7. What happened? The hell kind of question is that? 7 was trying very hard to be angry, but something had shaken him hard. His shoulders were trembling and his voice was strained. Snake is... Seven couldn't finish. He just looked away, his face twisted by it. Junpei wasn't sure what. Instead, Ace spoke. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and spoke. Snake is dead. He died just as the ninth man did. It was as if all the air had suddenly been sucked out of the room. Junpei had felt his heartbeat quicken, and he realized he was having trouble breathing. He could feel cold sweat beating on his forehead and neck. June, Santa, and Lotus looked the way he felt. All three were frozen in place, their faces white.
Oh my God. That's not true, is it? We should make sure.
Yeah, right, we should. They nodded to one another and headed for the number 3 door. Wait! Not that way! They stopped short and turned to look at Seven. He was pointing at the door with no number. I stuck a screwdriver in there to keep the door from closing all the way. It's not locked, so you can go in that way. Where is he? The shower room on the left side of the hallway. I put a broom in there too to keep the door open. We can get in without going through the number door, right? Yeah, that's right. Their new destination clear, Junpei and his companions headed for the door with no number. Once in the hallway, it was easy to spot the metal door on the left wall. It hadn't been opened when they'd been through before, but now, just as Seven had said, there was a broom stuck between the door and the frame, keeping it open. They looked at it for a moment, then stepped inside. It smells horrible. Lotus wrinkled her nose and covered up her mouth in disgust. Even Santa pinched his nose shut. Yeah, this is pretty awful. I feel like I'm gonna puke. It was just as bad as they'd said. Perhaps worse. A hideous smell filled the air, so thick they could almost taste it. It was sour and smelled of fish, feces, and burnt meat. It worked its way through Junpei's nose and down his throat to pound against the entrance to his stomach. He put his hand over his mouth and struggled to keep what little was in his stomach where it belonged. They didn't have to wonder where the body was. There was blood everywhere, a few arms of the spider reaching towards them as they walked in through the door. All one had to do was follow the many radial arms to their source. The body itself was hidden behind a divider. June, you should stay here. But, please, just do me a favor, okay? All right? He didn't give her a chance to say no. He put his hand on his shoulder, as if to shove her into the ground like a tent pole, turned and walked towards the divider. The end of the divider. It felt like it took an eternity for him to get there. Santa and Lotus followed, timid and nervous as a pair of children. Eventually, they reached the divider. They looked at one another and nodded slowly. Santa put his hands on the divider and peered around the corner. For a moment, he forgot to breathe. He felt his heart collapse in his chest like an empty cigarette carton, and time froze. Let's stop right there, because I know there's screaming coming up. And screw that for now. Alright. Next time, I think we might get to the next room we've got to get to, which I believe is going to be room 1. Yeah. Alright, so until then, peace out.